Joining me on the show this morning, and I want to talk specifically not about the crime itself, but rather what's triggering these people, is Leigh Richardson. She is with the the Brain Performance Center, also a brain health coach and consultant. So where your mind meets your actions, she's the person to talk to. Leigh, good morning. How you been?
Good morning, Scott. I've been good. Thanks for having me back.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. I laid it all out there. And we talk about the action and the short fuses and all that stuff. And what's going on inside someone's head when they decide they're going to pull a gun out and settle this, whatever the dispute may be. It can't possibly, for normal people anyway, rise to the level of me pulling a gun out and shooting at you because of some perceived aggression or transgression on the road. I don't get it.
Well, it all starts before the person even gets in the car. And you're right. It's what's going on in their head. Maybe they got an email before they left, and the email wasn't what they expected, and it had some negative tone to it. Maybe they got into a little spat with a family member before they got in the car. So it all starts before they get in the car, and it continues, and something triggers it. And nobody knows. I've had people that said, clients that said, I don't know why I reacted the way I did. It just happened. But I think that, the world that we live in is very uncertain, and that it keeps us, our autonomic nervous system, kind of going. Sometimes it'll bounce around. It'll ride the roller coaster, flight, fight, freeze, flight, fight, freeze. And the window of tolerance is very small. So once that autonomic nervous system gets bumped out of balance, it's hard to get it back in balance. And I think people get in the car and they start those ruminating thoughts. They thought about what happened yesterday or a week ago, or why did I say what I said? And they go down the rabbit hole. And that makes them very, very reactive. Most times it's not something that the person in the other car does. It's you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think for most of us, too, we start instantly thinking, well, it's a sociopath who does this. And I think there's some sociopathic elements to this. But it's interesting how you described it. It's like, yeah, I was having a bad day and something triggered me and I had enough. I pulled a gun out and shot this individual. Where I was coming from, like, there are people out there that at the drop of a hat, anything that is a perceived slight, they're going to, instead of yelling, and the gun comes out. Is it more often what you're talking about or more often what I'm talking about?
I think it's a combination of both. You have to have the gun in the car for it to come out.
Right.
And I'm amazed at how many people actually do carry guns. And that's not just in the Northeast. I'm in Texas. And the gun control here will probably never change.
Right.
But I think it's a combination of both, because it goes back to what I'm saying. The world, I saw a survey from 2016 that AAA did that said 80% of the people report reacting in an aggressive manner. Yeah. And that was in 2016, Scott. The world was a lot nicer back then.
But in 2016, we were like, oh, my God, look at how bad we are in 2016. We had no idea what was going to happen in 2023, make things look polite by those standards. And so the line keeps moving, right? And I think this is why a lot of people, and you talked about the prevalence of guns and handguns, I'm one who believes having one, at least in your vehicle, because it seems like a lot of this stuff is happening as a defense, is a reasonable thing. The more stories like this happen, the more people go, hey, you know what? I'm going to have a gun at least in my car in a lockbox, something I can access to, because God forbid, God forbid that happens. Now, one of our colleagues here, Brian Thomas, who does a show on our sister station, I think it was a year or two ago. He's driving out on, I think, 275 here in Cincinnati, and he gets like sideswiped by this guy. He goes off the road, looks up, this guy had hit a couple other people, and the dude's like, I thought he was like coming at him or something, or coming at someone. I don't know I forget what the reason why this guy was so agitated. And it wasn't just him, it was other drivers. And he's got concealed carry. He's like, man, if this guy comes up, I'm going to have to put one in him. I think that's a reasonable fear fear people have today because of the craziness that surrounds us. That's what drives people to get more guns, is that they don't want to become a victim. Or if they become a victim, they at least want to have a fighting chance of defending themselves and their family. I think that's reasonable, but it's the people who will take that gun at the most basic offense and present it, flash it, brandish it, or fire it, is what we saw on Saturday night on 75.
And I think that you're right. We all, and that goes to our constitutional right.
Mm-hmm.
We have the right to defend ourselves. And many people feel more comfortable because they know that they can if they need to. And I think that, what it all boils down to is that the world we live in today, we have a lot more fear. We have a lot more uncertainty. Mental health is more prevalent. Mental health problems. Brain health is mental health. And the brain is an organ, Scott, just like your heart. And if you thought something was wrong with your heart, you would be at a cardiologist's office in no time. You get up in the morning and you feel so overwhelmed. You don't want to go to work. You're so fatigued. You don't want to go. You don't want to get out of bed. And what do? You have a nasty conversation with yourself. Mm. Power through, man. Suck it up, buttercup.
Right.
And those are not the proper conversations. We all need to pay attention to our brain health, our mental health. And when we need help, get it. It is okay to need help. And it's okay to talk to a counselor or a pastor or an adult, someone that you connect with and that can provide some reason and some logic.
Yeah, we tend to get in our own head, right? And sometimes the head gets in the way. But unlike heart, okay, if I'm having chest pains or difficulty breathing, I know something's going on. Other guys that go, I'll tough it out. And that happens with guys a lot. Where they're like, my leg's about to fall off. I didn't think it was that big a deal. But when it's your brain, it's a whole different thing, because that's the organ that processes all that information coming at you. If that engine is broken, you can't self-assess like you would with another injury or condition.
No, and I'll tell you, I'll share a scary statistic with you, and that is by the year 2030, the World Health Organization predicts that the biggest disability will come from brain-related diseases and injuries.
That doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't.
Isn't that far off?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, honestly, because we are so underfunded and underutilized when it comes to mental health in this country. And previous generations did what you said. And it's like, tough it out. Shell-shocked veterans in World War I, and PTSD wasn't identified until much later. And now we know the effects of that, too. But we lost so many, primarily young men with this, but women, too, from mental disorders, that we just would institutionalize them and forget it. We'd call it something else. We'd ignore it. It wasn't polite to talk about. And it's been generations in this country, multiple generations in this country, that there was nothing done about mental health. And now we're so underfunded and we're so behind the eight ball. I think we're reaping what we sowed.
I agree with you. I do think that a little bit of attention is being paid to mental health. For instance, if you feel like you need some help, in the past, someone would call 911, which is great. And then typically they would dispatch a police officer, which is great. But a police officer doesn't know how to deal with a mental health condition. And now there's a number 988 that you can call, and you will reach somebody that's trained in mental health. So thank you for the opportunity to mention that. So everybody, if you feel like that you're full of hot air and you're about to pop, call 988.
Yeah, that's a good resource. I'm glad the needle's starting to move maybe in the other direction finally. Leigh Richardson's on the show. She's a brain health coach, brain performance, and we're talking about the mind and what happens in events like what happened Saturday, where a 70-year-old guy gets shot in a possible road rage incident. And it's not just a one-off. This stuff has been happening in a steady drumbeat. We've seen the numbers of road rage instances and shootings increase. They've doubled from 2018 to 2022, according to the research. And I don't think there's anyone listening who doesn't believe that the numbers are increasing. It seems like every few weeks in Cincinnati we have a road rage incident. Now, some of them may be known members. You got gangbangers. You got other people out there that are doing this kind of stuff. Sure, but 70-year-old guy gets shot in the head twice. That's not good. And so far we don't know if there's a suspect or they have identified the person or what. And it's kind of frightening that there are people out there that are just randomly shooting people for perceived threats. I can't think of anything that would happen behind the wheel where I'd pull out my gun and shoot someone, but I want to have it in case that person is the guy that shot the 70-year-old. At least give myself a fighting chance because it's incumbent upon me to come home to my family at night. Leigh Richardson, what's going on inside the mind of someone like this? Well, let's talk about if you got a short temper, and God knows as a guy, and when I was a younger guy especially, we all have that short fuse. Guys have that short fuse. We'll go off on a heartbeat. Not to the point where I'm picking up a gun and shooting upon someone, but you get pissed off. How do you talk yourself out of that, especially when you're driving?
Well, I think you have to calm yourself down. And I think you have to have enough self-awareness to realize, okay, I'm out of balance here, whatever you want to call it. I've heard it called much different things than that, but, I'm out of balance here and I need to calm myself down. And the easiest thing to do is to simply breathe. Take long, slow, deep breaths. If you change your breath rate, you'll change your heart rate. Your heart won't be so fast. And if you can get those two to dance together, you're creating heart rate variability, and that's a sign of wellness. Mm-hmm. So when you get in the car, pay attention to yourself. Do you feel those shoulders tense up? I mean, everybody feels it in a different place. Do you feel a little nausea in your stomach? Mm-hmm. Pay attention. Mm-hmm. The body keeps score of everything going on in the brain. So pay attention to yourself, and when you feel that tension or you feel that nausea, or you just kind of feel like that feeling of overwhelmness, stop. I'm going to take 2 minutes, and I'm going to take really slow, deep breaths. And you would be amazed at the physiological change you can create with 2 minutes of slow, deep breathing.
Yeah, but if I take 2 minutes, the guy that pissed me off in the other lane is going to get away.
Well, that's a very good point. But do you want to be on the defense, or do you want to be? Don't be offensive. Yeah. If you're offensive, you're encouraging. And what are you going to do if you catch him?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny. This happened a few weeks ago, too. Someone cut right in front of me trying to get off and no signal, anything like that. I had to slam on my brakes in my truck, and I was pissed. And then we get up, and my window's down, and I look over at the guy, and he's like giving me, dude, I'm so sorry. I apologize. And if you're the person who does something boneheaded, and we've all done that on the roads before, I think an apology like that, hey, my bad, it totally diffuses the situation. Ignoring the person, I think, is just going to escalate it.
I agree with you. You make a very, very good point. Anything you can do to diffuse the situation. And just my bad, no worry, man.
Like, okay, man, it's like I gave him the wave, like, it's all good. And instantly diffuse the situation. Like, man, people just don't do that anymore because they're afraid that, the road ragers, everyone's living in fear all the time. And it's easy to diffuse these things if you just acknowledge I made a mistake.
Absolutely. And people, just a nice smile. Sometimes that's all you got to do.
Yeah, careful, because then they think you're getting cocky. You could escalate, Leigh. Don't come at me cocky. Don't cut me off and then give me this cheesy smile, because,
Well, a cheesy smile isn't a nice smile.
Yeah, the smirk or something. Don't smirk, because some people have their smile's a smirk, and you can misinterpret that. Leigh Richardson, she's at the Brain Performance Center, brain health coach, talking about the incident on Saturday night, and there's more of these. It's just steady drumbeat of people that are acting like this. 70-year-old guy got shot in the head and the neck. Looks like he's going to be okay, I guess. But another example of road rage here in the tri-state. Some tips and where we're headed with this, but also how to head this stuff off. Leigh, all the best. Thanks for joining the show again. I appreciate you.